right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. You guys know why we're here. So before we get started, I just want to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves. I'll start first. Christopher Cason, Chicago-based sports journalist, works in a lot of places, Bleacher Report, GQ, mostly focused on sports. And then from under there, you go into fashion, fitness, and everything that falls underneath that umbrella. And, I guess we can move on to Lauren. Can you introduce yourself?
Hey, you guys, I'm Lauren Boyd. I'm in Hamilton on Broadway in New York City. I understudy Peggy Mariah as well as in the ensemble every night. I also have a company. It's an outreach program for senior citizens. It's called Broadway Babes. The outreach program blesses senior citizens one Broadway show at a time. So it's really beautiful to be a part of that.
Awesome. I'm Race Imboden, and I am a Team USA fencer and Olympian. I've been to the London 2012 and the Rio 2016 Olympics, where we earned a bronze medal. And I am the first World Cup winner in the history of men's foil, and the part of the first team to win the World Championships and current reigning world champion. And then on the side, I moonlight as a model, and it allows me to fund my career and be able to fence and do my passion full time. But I consider myself a fencer and an athlete first.
Definitely. And before we just go into the question, with everybody practicing social distance and all of us pretty much having careers that put us, we always have to be on the go. I just want to ask each of you how you're handling, this period of just social distancing, how you're, race for yourself, staying in shape, staying sharp. Lauren, like some of the things that you're doing at this time to basically just keep sharp and what we all do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really a blessing in disguise because I'm able to socialize with the fans on social media, and it's been a really beautiful time to get to connect with them, see how I can bless them. And I don't normally get to do that when I'm in a show 8 times a week. So it's really a blessing as much as it can be in this climate. So.
Yeah, I think she touched upon something, awesome. It's nice to hear somebody say, that's a blessing first. I think that there are a lot of things that the quarantine has done for me. It's like giving me time as an athlete to reflect. We're an Olympic athletes. You see us every 4 years, but we compete all the time, every year. We're always trying to achieve goals and, better ourselves, which just means that, I'm training 3 times a day, 5 to 6 times a week, and I'm in the gym. So I've moved my whole life over to Italy, and I train with my girlfriend over there. And to have this moment, I think it allowed me to take a step back. Obviously, everything went on froze, and the Olympic Games were pushed. So it flipped my whole schedule, my whole world upside down, because I'm so used to scheduling everything around the Olympic Games, which we were, 3 months out. So at the peak of our training. And so now that everything's been rescheduled, it's given me a moment just to kind of step back from sport for the first time really in 8 years, maybe, that I've really taken a step back and been like, whoa, there's things bigger than sport, focus in my relationships, my family, and just reflect on my goals and what I want personally outside of this game that I get to play.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think we're all just learning more about myself. I learned it's forced me to be patient, first of all, just because I'm so used to, being able to get up and move whenever I wanted to. And you're trying to get a lot of things done in a short amount of time. So it's really forced me to sit back, get a lot more reading done, focus on stuff in the house that needed to be, that I had been put off. So, so I'm just trying to utilize my time in the best way possible. All right, so we'll get started with why we're here. So the question that we do have is, if you could offer your newborn self one piece of advice, what would that be? And I guess I'll start with Lauren.
I was thinking about this long and hard, and there were a lot of questions that came up as I was thinking. But I think the one that really stuck out to me was, don't grow up too quickly. I would tell my little self that, because there were times when I was sitting in the car and my parents were talking and they mentioned something. I was like, what was that? And they're like, oh, you'll find out when you're older. And I would be so frustrated. So I would just anticipate, the time when I could be an adult and I could get to learn things about my career and about myself. And it's so beautiful, I think, as children, they have this sense of wonder and this sense of joy that as adults we often forget. So this time is beautiful because we can just take a step back and really reflect and use our imagination. It's been years since I've, really dug down and spent time with myself, like Race had said. And so I'm so appreciative of that and really trying to use this time as best as I can and use it positively.
Nice. Yeah, again, I guess we're going to relate on a lot of our answers. I think that it's funny for me too, because when I started asking myself, oh, what do I want to talk to my younger self about? It's the same thing, this idea of actually, it ended up being more about what my younger self reminded me of. And that, I could tell him about his future. I could tell him about that you're going to achieve all the things that you want to achieve right now. And you're going to have to constantly reset your goals and constantly, move on to bigger and bigger things. When you're a kid, you just want to like achieve that little bit of happiness, which it's like, be the best in your school, be the best in your, gym, be the best in your country. And you mark off all those goals and you end up somewhere that you couldn't really even fathom being, which is like number one in the world, or the best in your sport. It's kind of jaw dropping when you look back on it. So I actually said that I think that the important thing for me would be to ask him why we're doing it. Why did I start? Like, what is it that allowed me to keep going when I was a kid, when I had nothing? Because as I got older, fencing became a lot more about, it's competition, it's sport, it's very win to win. And it's very easy as an athlete to go from one success to another success, and every failure in between feels so down, and every up and success feels like, you're in the clouds. So I think it was, for me, it was to have that conversation with my younger self and say, what's the real point of this? Like, what do you do? What do you play sports for? And flip it on its head. I know that's not answering your guys' question directly, but for me, it was the most interesting answer that I could come up with, because I think that there's a part of us as a kid that's pure and does sport or does arts, or, is so well-rounded in the sense that, like, as you get older, like you said, it's like you have 8 shows a week. It's very grind. It kind of takes that, it turns into a job, it turns into a career, it turns your passion into something that's more stressful and more pressure, and it just gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And that's why everybody says it's lonely at the top, because it is. You're just with yourself out there, like battling with yourself all the time. I'm sure it's the same for you. And
yeah.
And so, yeah, that would be the conversations I would want to have.
And before, like, I answer that, and just speaking with you too and doing my research on you too, it's rare to find people who've been able to reach a high level of success of things that they fell in love with at an early age. A lot of people are, working jobs they may not want, but just looking at you two, you guys have managed to make careers out of what you love to do, what you grew up kind of doing. Like, as you advanced in your careers, what do you use to make it not feel like a job, to not get bored or tired of the process? Like, what do you look for just to keep going when, you may not want to work out, or you may not want to, have a rehearsal. You might want to just go out. Like, what keeps you guys going?
Yeah. I think for me, I make it a point after the show to go to the stage door and sign autographs, because when I was a kid, that was me on the other side of the fence, was just anticipating, waiting for those Broadway stars to come out so I could get their autographs. And it really is a good reminder of where I started and where I've come, because not many people can be on the other side of the fence. We're one of the few groups of people who have, reached the moon, essentially, is what our director, Tommy Kail, had said, which is, I think, so beautiful, because we are some of the few, like you said, who have gotten to do what we love to do for a living. But yeah, it's a beautiful reminder. I see people from Argentina, Mexico, Australia coming in and saving up all of their money and their life savings just to be in New York City and see our show, and it's really humbling. So I make sure that I do that every night just to remind myself, okay, this is what I'm doing it for. I'm not trying to do it selfishly, but I'm doing it for, the people in the audience, the 1,300 people that are watching. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that the power of a fan is something that definitely isn't taken lightly by anybody who's in any kind of public figure. And I think that it's the same thing. You're in a Broadway show. You're so judged on your work in and out daily, and you're so critical of yourself. I'm sure as a performer. I can imagine that, like, for me, signing, I remember very specifically the first time I signed an autograph, and I was in Russia, and I was 16, 17, and someone asked me for my autograph. Like, I made it into the round of a World Cup, like we have different days of competition, and you make it to the last day. It's like the day that everyone comes to see. And I made it to the last day, kind of like in tennis, making it later in the rounds. And it was the first time that kids they didn't know who I was. They didn't know where, like anything about me, but they were asking me for an autograph. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, I can't believe that I'm that guy now. It's like that, such a humbling experience. And you're so excited as a kid, like when you sign your first one. Then when you get older and it's happening all the time, you lose that, like you lose that kind of like tingle that it gives you. And it's kind of nice that you keep that. I'll probably steal that from you, honestly. And
please do.
Yeah. And I think for me, actually, the time when it's really tough for me is the time that I turn to others. I am really about my team and the people around me. As an athlete, and especially in individual combat sport, like it's very on you. And when you make mistakes, it's harsh. It's on you. The weight is on your shoulders, and those mistakes feel very heavy. So that's when I have a very, I'm very close to my mother and my father. I'm in a great relationship with a very powerful, strong woman athlete. And I have surrounded myself with, a great team of coaches. Like, I'm currently in the house of my physical trainer right now and his wife. So
Awesome.
I rely on them a lot, like in periods of crisis or periods or moments where, it doesn't matter how much money you got, doesn't matter how many medals you got, like you need those people around you. You need that support, especially as an athlete. I think mental health is a huge part of that scenario. When you are down, when it isn't going right, when you don't make the show, when you are sick or injured or whatever that is. So yeah, so for me, that's when you surround yourself with excellence so that you can constantly perform at an excellent level.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And just thinking about my answer to the question, I didn't have to think long about what my answer would be. It was, just growing up as a kid on the west side of Chicago, my thing was just trying to fit in. I knew I was a little bit different just because I had different interests than most of my friends. It took me like a little bit longer to catch up with what they were interested in, but you always want to fit in as a kid. So my answer would be to, don't be afraid to not fit in, because you don't have to fit into a group or anything. What's unique is, what you're interested in. And I see a lot more kids now, it's all about individuality. You can be yourself without, wondering about, what someone else thinks of you. So I think kids now are growing up in like a great time where they can be themselves earlier, not fit in. They can wear whatever they want to wear. They can I see fifth graders with pink hair now, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just that would be my advice to myself is, don't be afraid to not fit in, be yourself. And, that's what is going to lead to these friendships. Like that's what makes you who you are. So just diving further into that, like what kind of child were you guys growing up? Like, it seems like, to reach where you guys had to be very strong-willed, stubborn at some points, but you can remember, like, what type of children were you guys?
Yeah. For me, I was a very, very shy kid. If people talked to me, it was very difficult for me to actually formulate some words to where I could, express how I was feeling. So dance was my way of expression. And I knew how to speak to people through dance. And so I just carried that through up until my teens, when I actually started to have to speak in front of people, be up on a stage and project my voice. And um, I think it was a great learning experience for me, because just to be thrown into these situations is you're learning on the job basically. And um, yeah, I'm grateful for the times where I could um, be up on those stages and dance and perform and get rid of that uncomfortability as I grew up.
That's yeah, I was the probably the opposite of that. I was like I grew up in Atlanta. Atlanta was the first place that I started fencing, and then I was a New Yorker for most of my life. So my first fencing lesson was in Atlanta, and I came to the fencing club. I had like super long hair. All my friends were skaters, and we, ripped jeans, and you walk into like a fencing club, which is, usually a preppier crowd. So I didn't really fit the bill when I was a kid, but I was just like, I was just a rough and tumble kind of like, I turned into a city kid, but I was just kind of like a goofball that was really kind of artsy. I played the drums. I played instruments. I liked music. I worked at record labels as I was growing up. Like I was working at a record label when I made my first Olympic team. So like it was something that I think is something that I always balanced with, is like, how much of myself do I sacrifice in order to achieve my goals? And it's something that I think a lot of us deal with in any profession, is just like, okay, I want to do this thing. And then everyone has an idea of what that thing is, especially with social media today. If you say you're an athlete, like it immediately pigeonholes you. Like you have to be a certain way. You have to act, you have to talk, you have to represent, you have to be a role model. You have to like certain things. You have to be fit. It's like all these different things. And athletes are people. And LeBron has done a great job with that. Speaking up and giving this idea of like an athlete with a voice. And then you have people like Kaepernick and people who are standing up for more than that, and Megan Rapinoe. And that's always been a big driving force for me, because my favorite athletes were like Muhammad Ali and, big talking, strutting athletes. And I was never that guy exactly, but I talk more than my teammates. I talked a little bit of like crap back and forth with fencers when we go at it. But, so yeah, that was my mentality as a kid, is I came in just loving it. It was never something I did to get into college. It was never something I did with a goal other than just like, I wanted to really do this thing, and I didn't know why. And I let that drive me. And I kind of tried to keep my identity as pure as I could throughout that. And I think it's something I'm still battling with today, like trying to be myself and also be, somebody that represents well and plays a sport and can be a role model.
Definitely. Neither of us is where we're at today, what we're doing, without, obviously some great people in our lives. Like we all have that mentor, or it could be mentors who've pushed us, who've guided us. Like growing up, like who would you guys say, was there one person who, might have steered you in the direction you're at now, or were there multiple people?
Definitely multiple people, but I think the driving force between for my career was my mom. She really pushed me, even the times where I was, in the kitchen crying, like, I don't want to dance anymore. This is too hard. It's too difficult. She was like, "Are you kidding me? You're a dancer. Like, come on. Like, this is just a moment. Don't get in your feelings and just push and drive through." And she's a very strong-willed woman. So I get that from her. So anytime someone says no, and that's 99% of the times when I'm going into these auditions and giving my 110%, 99% they're going to say no. So it's just that 1% where, we get these yeses, and it just solidifies the fact that we're supposed to be, where we're meant to be. So I'm really grateful for her, grateful for my family's support. They've just been supportive throughout my entire career. since I was little, and I got my first point shoes. Like, that was so exciting. You know, they sacrificed a lot for me to drive me to dance classes and wait in the car for 2 hours until I was done and drive me back. And the money that goes into the leotards and the tights and the shoes and the hairpins and everything just accumulated. And so I'm extremely grateful for them and their sacrifices. And I wouldn't be where I am today without them.
Yeah, I think exactly the same for me. I have a group of people. I have a list of coaches that I could say were mentors to me. And I think the one thing that has been there through everything, obviously, is my parents and the foundation they set for me to chase a path that's not regular, you know, to not force me to be anything else than what I wanted to be, and let that, you know, go as far or fizzle out, and just allow me to dream big. Honestly, my parents gave me a lot of space. Like, they allowed me to dream big and fight differently. We didn't have we moved to New York. My dad got laid off from his job. My family went bankrupt. Fencing is a very expensive sport. It's like tennis or golf, and you have to buy a lot of equipment. You have to pay for a lot of lessons. And I had a really kind of lucky career, in the sense that, like, I had a few really important coaches who let me train for free once I started proving myself. Some of my first competitions internationally were funded by other people and supporters, and a group of, you know, of people that I would have never been where I am without them. But through all of that, my parents were there, you know, pushing me, but also never telling me that it was impossible when it really did seem impossible. So it's, and I think it takes a lot. I think it takes a lot as a parent to look a kid in the eye and say, like, you know, like, okay, you want to go to the Olympic Games, like, you can do it, you know. And in this day and age, like, we're always, you know, like you said, it's 99% no's. Like, what are the chances your kid's actually going to be an Olympian? So to sit there and really look at you and say, like, yeah, you're right. Like, you can really do it. You can do it. And then I go to, you know, 3,000 competitions before I got good, and was just getting owned, just getting killed and being miserable and crying and, like, you know, going through my learning curve, and then coming out and ending up being who I am. And that was definitely because of them.
Definitely. Now, Lauren, going back to you, as you mentioned, like, hearing no is a big part of, like, auditioning. And I know that could be a little bit, you know, it could be deterring, because you put in all of this work, and, you know, you're going in there kind of with it in the back of your head that, you know, I'm about to put my all into this just to have, you know, someone look at me and say, no, it's not good enough. Mm-hmm. How do you, like, what do you reach down into to keep going for their next audition? How do you quickly erase, like, a past audition and get back into the mindset of, I'm going to go right back into auditioning again?
Yeah. Well, there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to be on Broadway. Like, I had made it a point and a goal of mine. And so anytime anybody said no to me, it was just fuel for the next audition, honestly. And you know, there's always good friendly competition when you're in an audition as well. So you're able to dance with your friends and see how far you can push yourself, even in just those rooms. But honestly, yeah, it was fuel for me when people told me no. Even, you know, when I was little, I was bullied and all of these things. And I didn't let myself get that in my head. You know, I was just focused on and knew what I wanted to do. And after moving to New York, within 6 months, I had booked my first Broadway show. So I had done one thing every day that would lead up to my Broadway show. And I think that was a great goal setter for me as well, because, you know, something that may seem so big and so out of reach, if you take one baby step every day, you're going to reach it eventually. And there was nothing, like, just blinders straight forward. Like, nothing was going to distract me.
Definitely. And Ray's, going to you now. Well, you mentioned just, you know, your friends, you guys were, like, you had skateboarding friends. So yeah, you're entering a world where, like, that's not the norm at all. So I'm pretty sure you got some side eyes, and there were things that could have deterred you. Like, what made you just continue on, because it could have been easy for you to say, you know what, this is not my type of crowd. I don't fit in here.
Yeah. I think that there was certainly a chip. There was like, it felt like I had a chip on my shoulder a little bit. I don't like when people tell me I can't do something. So I definitely didn't like I always felt like, counted out a little bit. I started a little bit later than some kids. And I progressed quickly, but not in the same, so I have like an interesting career in the sense of like, I hit a wall when I was young. Like I was medaling when I was young, but not winning everything. And then when I was around like the end, like 14, 15, I made a transition to a coach, and my coaches before that were really strict and kind of military. And this guy kind of gave me freedom, and he was like, there are no wrongs. You can just produce the things that you want to produce. The goal is to win, and you have to find your own path to that. It's not my path. It's not what I tell you. And he started giving me freedom to kind of be myself again. And I went very quickly from like being 16 and making my first like international circuit, which is for, guys that are, we call them cadets, right? So, but I was 16, I was traveling internationally alone for the first time. And then by the time I was 19, I was in London at the Olympics. So it was like a big shoot. Like I shot up very quickly after that. So there was absolutely a lot of things that deterred me. Like everybody was traveling before me. Everybody had money to go to a lot of competitions. So if there was like 8 competitions on the circuit, we qualify for an international team by doing the best you can at like 4 competitions, let's say. So people would get to go to 8 and I would go to 4. So it was like, I had to perform differently than other people would. And I had to kind of do it in a stricter setting where like I was borrowing gear from people, and like we were like, budgeting flights, and I was taking like these weird, staying in really, really bad hotels, and just like, like just trying to do anything to make it there. But that kind of stuff, even when you're a kid and you don't fully understand it, because it's not totally your burden when you have parents, you feel it, and you start to build this chip, and it starts to like come out. And especially in combat sports, like your intensity, it carries you, like your ability to focus, your ability to take it one step further, to fight all the way up to the buzzer, that's like what makes the difference between a champ. And I think it gave me a lot of that as a kid. And then definitely like, my friends didn't know what fencing was. And like, I still get poked fun of sometimes, and like, it's just a misunderstanding. And now that I'm like an Olympian and they see me like hanging out with these like great athletes and getting to be a part of cool stuff, they're like, oh, it's awesome. But when I was a kid, in high school, it was like, what are you doing? Like, where are you going around and like poking people? Like, I don't understand like what's going on, and in much, much worse words, and the howler tongue for sure. But yeah, that was the gist of it. But I loved it. I loved it, man. I loved it. I loved getting to sword fight for fun, for a game. And I don't know, there wasn't too much that was going to deter me, and everything that was negative, I felt like I added into to help me. Yeah.
Definitely. Now, I'm not sure. I think we're kind of winding down. So I did want to just ask you to, just the way we started this conversation on offering advice to our newborn selves. You guys are still in the prime, or just getting into the prime of your careers. So now looking forward, what advice would you give children? What advice would you give your children coming up? They're going to have dreams. They're going to have aspirations. I have no idea what the future is going to look like with the time we're in now, but what advice would you give to your children?
I would tell them you can do anything you set your mind to. Yeah, to just block out the naysayers and just to focus so hard on your passion and your love, because if you have a passion and a love for it, you're going to succeed every time. And for me, I've never worked a day in my life because I'm doing what I love to do. So I would hope and pray that my kids, have that same future.
Yeah, it's awesome. I definitely, I think that in the future, it will be more important than ever to support our kids in a whole new world. The internet's going to change everything. What we're doing now is going to be, I think, probably really irrelevant to the things that they're going to be pushing out with, complete access to the internet and everything that's changing so quickly. So absolutely, the first thing is that you can definitely be whoever you want to be and do it however you want to do it, and there's nobody stopping you but you. Yeah, and then also I think that there's a big moment for us as men culturally too to support women going forward a lot, especially. I think that it's something that we don't talk about so much as male athletes. It's, you know, I'm surrounded by guys all the time. Everybody's a guy in my life. All my trainers are guys, and my girlfriend is a female athlete, and she's surrounded by men all the time. And it's such a difficult concept. So for me, it's actually something we just spoke about, which is like going forward. For me, it's a big thing to instill that in my children. Like whether I have a man or a boy or I have a girl, like teach them that, it doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter where you come from. Like, don't judge a book by its cover, and then let everybody be who they're truly supposed to be, and you'll get the best results from anybody in your relationships or your enemies.
That's good.
Yeah, it's a great way to close. So, everybody's schedule is kind of on hold, but just for right now, like, can you guys just leave your social handles where people can follow you, keep up with what you guys are doing?
Yeah, of course. My Instagram, Twitter account are both Lauren M. Boyd. So Lauren, M for Marie, Boyd. Yeah.
Cool. Mine is Race Imboden, regular race, RACE. And I don't know if it's underscore, but if you type in race and then Imboden, IMBODEN, I'll be there. You'll see me. It's the guy fencing on every photo. So.
Yeah, and I'm C4 Dunk on, I think, every social channel. But once again, thank you guys for joining me. I've definitely enjoyed getting to know you guys more, and look forward to keeping up with what you guys have going on in the future.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. Pleasure, Chris. Nice to meet you, Lauren.
Nice to meet you, Race. Take care.